Hey guys, welcome back to Falcon Central Radio Show on the Pro Football Central Radio Network. I am your host, Aaron Freeman, joined by my co-host, Scott Karasik. And this week we are joined by Blogging Dirty's Matt Karoly. We are going to be talking about the Falcons' win over the Jets in Week 8. We're going to be previewing their upcoming matchup against the Carolina Panthers in Week 9. And as usual, we'll be answering your mailbag questions throughout the show. Well, Matt, welcome to the show. This is your first appearance on the Falcons Central Radio. How does it feel to finally be on? You've been begging us since last November or something like that?
Yeah, kind of like the same thing with Locked On Falcons. I figure if I beg enough, you'd finally let me on. So it's good to finally be here and join you guys and talk some Falcons football.
All right. So as we often do on this show, we start things off talking roster moves. Nothing too big with the Falcons. There was a big trade deadline. We might talk a little bit about that. But the Falcons made a roster move since last week's show. They elevated Leroy Reynolds back to the roster. He was on the IR with a pec injury. And to replace him on the IR, they put Jordan Tripp, who's been out the last couple of weeks with a concussion. I believe it's the second concussion this year. So he is done for the year. Hopefully he will, this won't end his career, but certainly if the concussion is serious enough to put him on the IR for the rest of the season, that certainly will be a concern moving forward. But we did get a question from Andy at Falcons Andy on Twitter. Asked, what do you think Reynolds' role now is? He's been activated. Is he purely a special teams player, or does he have a chance to play defense?
I'd say he's the key special teams voice. He's a voice on the sideline, and he probably rotates in a good bit at weak side linebacker so that they can keep Vic fresh.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree with that. Definitely one of the special teams captains on that side. I mean, it is interesting though, because I did, tweet this out earlier in the week, thinking that, during the preseason, Leroy did have a lot of reps starting at weak side linebacker, and then obviously when he went down with the injury, Duke, got his opportunity probably sooner than the coaching staff expected. So it'll be interesting to see, if DQ reverts back to that, or he sticks with what he had in the New York game where, Vic Beasley saw a lot of snaps at Sam, and then Devondre went back to Will. And then occasionally Vic would, rush down at linebacker or at defensive end, and then Devondre would, go back to Sam and whatnot. So that's something I'll be looking for in the Carolina game, whether he decides to do that or if he just wants to keep him, as kind of a core special teamer and just rotate in when a guy needs a breather or two.
All good points. I don't expect Reynolds to get much of a shot on defense. I think his primary role will be special teams. I think if he does play defense, it'll be similar to what we saw with Kamal Ishmael last week, who only played, I believe, 4 snaps on defense. So it'll be a limited role. It'll be the occasions when the Falcons go base and Beasley's not at that Sam linebacker, which wasn't a lot this past Sunday. I don't suspect it will be a lot this upcoming Sunday, nor the following Sunday. So I think Reynolds, certainly will have a role on this team on special teams. He'll probably be active, assuming his health checks out, and it does sound like that will be the case coming back from that injury. So it'll be primarily him and Ishmael playing special teams, and their roles on defense will probably be pretty small. And then when Duke Riley comes back, I think he'll probably wind up taking over that spot. And though Falcons will have a 4-man rotation as their 3 linebackers with Beasley, Riley, Jones, and Campbell. Let's talk about the trade deadline. A lot of big moves. The Falcons did not make a move, but were there any particular trades that you loved or hated that you guys wanted to discuss before we move on to the Jets game?
I mean, I think that we have to mention the Kelvin Benjamin trade just because of who the Falcons are playing this week and the fact that it's an interdivision trade for us. Kelvin Benjamin traded away from the Panthers for a 3rd and a 7th. How does that really affect the Panthers when you look at him? Like, to me, I don't see him with the number 1 receiver anymore. Funchess is solid, but he was doing his best work as a 2. And Olsen's out. So they're basically got like Curtis Samuel, who's a rookie and hasn't shown anything, and a guy coming out the backfield, and Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, I mean, that Buffalo-Carolina trade on both ends, to me, like, just doesn't make any sense. at least it doesn't really fit Buffalo's point of view. Anyways, I thought Buffalo was kind of content on stockpiling these draft picks and kind of playing it out with the roster that they had, and to then take a third and a seventh and flip them for Kelvin Benjamin, who has a year and a half left, and there's no guarantee they re-sign him. And also for a player like, for Tyrod Taylor, for a guy that can't really separate like Benjamin can't, it just doesn't seem to fit that offense very well. And then on the flip side of it, I mean, for Carolina's point of view, like Scott said, I mean, now they're down their wide receiver one. The only thing that it does kind of make sense a little bit from Carolina's perspective, and I saw this on Twitter earlier in the day, was how someone was talking, I think it was a Carolina writer, was saying how Funchess and Benjamin are very similar in the routes that they run and their size and everything, and that goes. So, having two similar guys on the field and having them be their top wide receivers kind of is a little redundant. So to get rid of one of those and keep the guy that, has a longer term on his deal, maybe makes a little bit of sense. And, obviously Benjamin had his health issues, as we know, with the weight and stuff. So kind of he was falling out of favor to begin with. But again, he was their wide receiver one throughout the year. So still a bit of a head scratcher. But for me, the trade that I thought was probably the best trade, I think, was they gave up a lot for him, but Seattle obviously needed to have an offensive lineman come in that wasn't already in that building. And Dwayne Brown is someone that is one of the more underrated left tackles, I think, in the league. And, Russell Wilson has been running for his life for the last several years in Seattle. So to have a stabilizing force on that left side, on his blind side, I think is going to pay huge dividends for them, regardless of the price tag that they gave up.
Fair enough. Yeah. Off subject, but has anybody ever told you that you have a striking resemblance to Matt Schaub?
Nope, that would be a first, but hey, I'll take it. I mean, we're both Matts. I've tried been auditioning for the Falcons to come on board, being another Matt on the roster, but they haven't returned any of my calls yet. But
right.
No, I mean that's the first time I heard that.
Okay, well, I mean the one they have all the quarterbacks are Matts and most of the special teams guys, so I think they might need a long snapper. To get the perfect.
I feel like I'm right for the job. So I mean, hey, give me a call, Falcons.
No, learn how to kick, because Matt Bryant's been here for almost a decade, and
that's true. I mean, I think they're going to be looking for a new kicker come the next off season. So hey, I mean, maybe I should start working on my form.
Yeah, I thought all the trades were interesting. I didn't have a major issue with the Benjamin trade. I feel like they're not going to lose a whole lot going from Benjamin to Funchess. Basically, similar to what Matt said, I think Benjamin was their most effective receiver, no doubt about it. But in terms of the roles in the offense, it was more of a 1A, 1B with him in Funchess. It is so I really think it's more, instead of saying they're losing a number one receiver, I think it's really more they're losing a number two receiver, because I think Funchess can do most of the things that Benjamin can do, maybe not all the things, but I think that's a pretty big drop, and I saw something that the Panthers wrote in their press conference today that Ron Rivera was talking about. They did this because they wanted to open up the deep ball more and get more shots down the field. And that was interesting because Benjamin is the only guy that's been catching deep passes from them. And Cam Newton hasn't completed a deep pass, according to Pro Football Focus, to any other receiver other than Kelvin Benjamin this year. So it'll be interesting to see if now that, I guess they're believing it's addition by subtraction in some way, and we'll see if that works out. But I liked all these trades. I liked the Garoppolo trade. I liked the Ajayi trade. I thought that was a great move. I don't know if this is going to be long-term success, but certainly for a fourth-round pick to get a lead tailback that can help you in the postseason, I think that's a brilliant move. As you said, Dwayne Brown. I don't know if it's going to immediately fix the Seahawks' offensive line, but it certainly means that they won't have a massive, massive liability at that left tackle spot anymore, and they're headed potentially to the playoffs. And the Darius trade, that was probably the steal of this trade series, just given, he was only given up for a 6th-round pick with Jacksonville. Got, basically he'll be a third defensive tackle, and he'll be the best third defensive tackle, best backup defensive tackle in the NFL. and to basically only spend a conditional 6th-round pick on that is a great move for the Jaguars, and the Bills obviously feeling that they were getting rid of a malcontent in the locker room and whatnot. And so we'll see if they're better for that in the future. But
that was the one guy I was hoping the Falcons would go after. They'd have to restructure a contract or two just to get him under the cap, but you bring him in, you see how he does in this scheme. Worst case scenario, you have Darius and you somehow re-sign Poe long term, and you've got those two guys and Jarrett just destroying people.
Would have been fun. I was pushing for the trade back in August when it seemed like the Bills were having a fire sale. And it is, it's interesting, Matt, that you mentioned that, talking about them in terms of them seeing like they were content to go into the offseason with the picks. It seemed like they were planning, their plan was, let's get as many picks so we can trade up in the draft and get a quarterback. And now maybe that they gave up a 3rd and a 7th for Benjamin, maybe they might be a little bit more willing to for another year. We'll see how it goes, but it'll be interesting to see if this sort of changes their plans in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely should go with Tyrod for more than just a year, but like you said, we'll see what their thinking is right now. I don't know what their thinking is. I mean, I thought, like I said, I thought they were thinking more for the future and stockpiling the picks, but now they might have changed that thinking with this Benjamin trade.
All right, let's talk about the Week 8 win over the Jets. Falcons won 25-20. They held the Jets to 43 yards on the ground, which is their best performance of the season. They also created a turnover, which everybody has been looking for. I don't know if you can technically say they created a turnover, but maybe the rain created the turnover for them when Jeremy Curley muffed the punt, but it counts still. So the Falcons will take it any way they can get it. Matt, let's start with you. What were some of the things that some of the positives that you took away from the Jets game?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, you definitely have to start with the defense. I thought they were the star of the day. I've been pretty hard on them on Twitter the last couple of weeks for their poor run defense, and a lot of people kind of wanted me to divert my attention to the problems on offense. But I mean, I really thought that the last 3 weeks, a lot of the games were lost just by the fact that Atlanta couldn't control the line of scrimmage battle, and they were letting the opponent kill clock on them on the ground, and they didn't let the Jets do that this week. And it's it looked like they were gonna go back to their old form on the first play of the game. They let Bilal Powell go off for a 12-yard run, but right after that point, they put their foot down and only allowed, I think, like 31 yards on 21 carries the rest of the day. So that was my big takeaway, was the defense. And then, I mean, obviously the offense, again, did some good things, but I think, like you said, the weather had a lot to do with some of the errors that we saw that kind of held them back a little bit with the 3 fumbles and some of the drop passes to extend drives on 3rd down. But definitely for me, it was the defense. They were the star. They definitely held their ground, carried their weight this week, and allowed the Falcons to get a much needed win.
I thought Atiba Rubin was huge when he was in there.
Definitely.
I had a couple of plays when he was in there, and he would blow a play up, and I'd be like, "Wait, is that Jarrett or is that Rubin?" Because he wears 79 and Jarrett wears 97, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't going dyslexic on everybody. But it was great. Like, Rubin was in there, and he was looking just like he was one of the other 2 guys who can actually play run defense. And the Falcons just rotated those 3 guys. They didn't rotate anybody else in at defensive tackle except for maybe like 3 or 4 snaps when it was obvious pass situations where it was Adrienne Claiborne.
Yeah, it was a good day for the run defense. I thought Rubin had a good day. It's Ataba, by the way. I just want to correct you on that one, because that's what I do.
It's spelled Atiba. I'm going to say Atiba.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm looking at it.
His mama name on top, but it's fine. I thought, I think the defensive line across the board really sort of was able to take advantage of a very weak Jets offensive line, and that's what you need. I don't think, some people may think, oh, Duke Riley's out the game, so that's why the Falcons' run defense got improved. No, I think it's because when the defensive line plays well, this run defense can stop the run, because I don't think the linebackers as individuals really sort of stand out in that end. I think that, they're made for coverage. They're made for playing with a lead, which we haven't really had that much this season with the Falcons, given their issues on offense. But I think, the defense really brought it. I love seeing Vic Beasley at the Sam linebacker spot. I thought that was a great move, instead of having Ishmael or Sean Weatherspoon or somebody else out there at that weak side linebacker. I think getting 3 athletes on the field, and I think Beasley's upside at the Sam linebacker. People have made much about Campbell's potential there. I think Campbell does have a lot of potential there, but I think Beasley's potential there blows Campbell's potential there out of the water. I think he has the potential to be a better run defender, a better coverage guy, obviously a better pass rusher. So I think he checks all those boxes, and if he continues to get work there, I think, this defense, at least the linebackers play, there will be at least one linebacker on the field that I can actually say I enjoy watching play football this year. So, I thought it was across the board. The Falcons saw some positive. I thought the offense looked better. I thought the play calling was better. But again, coming off of that, I've said up before, I think the play calling this year under Sark has basically been a C+. I thought, particularly in the Patriots game, it was more like a D- or an F, if we're being honest. And so the fact that it was better this week, I think, sort of it was just natural, just sort of going back to the norm. I wouldn't necessarily say it was better than the C+. I still think there's things that they work out, but it was certainly an improvement. And hopefully they can continue to make improvements as the rest of the year wears on, and we can get this offense back to a point where, 25 points isn't necessarily something that we have to struggle to get, and we can get that with relative ease. And we'll need it going up against some of these opponents down the stretch. We got a mailbag question, as we often do, from Evan Birchfield. He asked, who is the brother of the week? And for Matt, this is Evan's personal question. It's basically which player did the most against the Jets that won't make many headlines this week.
I'm going to go with Vic Beasley.
Ooh, took mine. Damn.
Because Vic was killing it off the edge this week. He probably had a pressure every other snap when he was out there pass rushing. And you were just like, man, he's so close to a sack. He's so close to a sack. And on the Trufant sack, he basically flushed McCown into Trufant. On the Poe and Jarrett sack, he crashed on one end, Claiborne crashed on the other, and then those two guys just happened to get the sack. But any of those 4 guys was there once they disengaged their block. And then on the what was the other play? I think it was on the McKinley sack. He was out there in coverage, and you were like, holy crap, this dude's out there in coverage, and McKinley's getting a sack. So, I don't know. I think he was just out there doing his thing, and it's fun watching a guy who loves to play football play as well as he did this week.
Yeah, I mean, since you took mine, I guess you brought up the other guy that I probably would say is the second one is Adrienne Claiborne. I think, and you could probably say this for him all season. He seems to be, in the nickel package, obviously he's the guy that gets rotated inside, and he seems to be the one that kind of does some of the dirty work as far as crashing down and kind of throwing his body around to allow guys like, Grady Jarrett or, Vic Beasley to come around on the stunt. So, and there was before I came on the show, Alan Stark was doing his GIF review, and I saw he had one. I think he was coming off the edge on this one, but he crashed down on the James Carpenter and allowed Poe to swing around and come free and have a hit on McCown. So, I mean, he's been doing that all season, but, I think it especially stood out in the Jets game, like Scott was saying. I mean, those guys, Beasley and Claiborne, kind of did the dirty work for Poe and Jared and Tack to get the stats, to get the sacks. So I'll go with Claiborne.
Well, I'll make it a 3 for 3. I'll go another defensive lineman, but I think I picked him last week, so maybe I'll have to force myself to pick somebody new. But I'm going to go with Derrick Shelby. I think he did an outstanding job against the run. I think he's steadily been one of the team's few reliable run defenders at that defensive end spot, playing that strong side defensive end. We went into the season thinking Upshaw would be the starter at that spot, but when we got to week 1, it was Shelby getting the start. and I think he's been steadily improving over the course of the season. He doesn't get as many opportunities to shine as a pass rusher, but every now and then he'll get a hurry, he'll get a pressure here or there. And I just think, a lot of people are talking about Ataba Rubin and how well he played, but I think if we're talking about, who are some of the better run defenders against the Jets, I think Shelby really sort of stood out, and everybody's sort of who's second fiddle to Grady Jarrett, who's consistently been the Falcons' best run defender with his disruptive capabilities. I thought Shelby did a really good job being disruptive and has done so the last couple of weeks. And while playing good run defense is certainly not sexy, when I'm watching this team on tape, it's not something that you see commonly. So whenever you do it, it definitely pops to me. So I'll give Derrick Shelby some love again this week.
Yeah, I noticed he seemed to, Courtney Upshaw, I don't know if he's still dealing with that leg injury, but I mean, his snaps definitely have decreased the last couple of weeks, and I think Shelby kind of took over that strong side defensive end role. So, I mean, it could be just like you're saying. I mean, his play has definitely shown out the last couple of weeks, and I mean, that's a good sign because he's the one that's signed longer term than Upshaw. Upshaw's contract expires after the year, so if Shelby can continue this up, then Falcons got a guy that can provide strong run defense for the next 2 years, which is definitely a positive.
Yeah, they played Upshaw at the Leo spot in the base.
I did see that actually. Yeah,
he was rotating in there with Reed, and he did make the most of, I think, of his limited snaps. I think he only played like 8 snaps in the game or something like that. But he did pop on a couple of occasions. So it's one of those things. Like normally when I see Upshaw at Leo, I'm like, we're gonna have Upshaw play Leo. But he certainly played well. Usually when I'm down on Courtney Upshaw, he usually pops at that point. And then when I start to, then he just sort of disappears for a week or two, and then I'm like, oh, here, Courtney Upshaw again. But Upshaw, he does make his presence known, and probably I was down on him more just because he has been absent the last couple of weeks, more so than any sort of poor play. But he's another guy that does a good job being disruptive and getting those penetrations. There was I can't remember who was it was probably Powell, but there was a play where he got upfield and disrupted the play in the backfield, and then it was someone else cleaned it up. I think it was Campbell maybe that cleaned it up for a tackle for loss or something like that. But it was really because of Upshaw's penetration that really led to it. Evan Birchfield's next question is it known yet why Matt Ryan was wearing a coach sleeve? I don't recall seeing him wear one in a while.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they were having some sort of miscommunication issues throughout that game. I know when I rewatched the game before the Austin Hooper touchdown, and I don't know if anyone else caught this. I tweeted this out and I got some responses, but Matt Ryan, kind of stormed off on the sidelines after the Jets called timeout, and you could see him mouth the words "shut the f up" to the quarterback coach, I think Bush Hamden, and then he followed up by saying, "just get the play in." So I don't know. I think something was going on with the headset, or maybe Matt Ryan was just voicing some frustrations with the play calling. I don't know, but I think that because there was also a time I think later in the game where Ryan came over, and I think they got it on camera where the Jets players are. I don't know if they were trying to, I think, steal some of the signals when Matt Ryan came over, but he also came over to Hamden, and I think he was telling him the play call just verbally. So I think that's what led to eventually then I think him getting the sleeve. I don't know when. I think that might have been in the third quarter, but again, that someone would have to back me up on that.
He actually started the game with the sleeve.
Did he? Oh, yeah. All right. Well,
he had it all game.
Throw that out the window then.
Well, I think part of it is because they were anticipating those issues with the communications. They probably had a couple in New England and were like, oh, well, I guess it's just an away game thing. And it's bad because there was bad weather there. They're like, oh, with all this fog, we were having trouble getting the calls in. Maybe with all the rain, they were also having trouble getting the calls in. Because all that stuff's very wonky. All the wireless headsets and everything, especially with everybody having cell phones with Bluetooth turned on all the time. All that signal can get crossed, and it doesn't help.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only, I can only speculate. I have no idea. But, yeah, I would imagine it probably had something to do with communication issues or anticipated communication issues. Maybe that was due to the weather. Maybe that has something to do with maybe the Falcons figured out that, because of the issues with the play calling, maybe they figured this might streamline the process in some form or fashion. I have no idea. It'll be interesting to see if we see him wear it again against Carolina, and that will indicate that it wasn't just a sort of a weather-related issue, assuming it doesn't rain in Charlotte this weekend, which I don't think it will. But last I checked the weather, I don't know. I'm not a meteorologist. But, yeah, so I have no idea. Evan is right. I can't even think the last time Matt Ryan wore a sleeve. It's been years. It's just one of those things where it so rarely happens. I don't know. This might have even been the first game he ever did it. Probably not, but it seems like it's been a while.
Did he not have his glove on this week either? I saw someone was talking about. Did he take that off at some point? His I guess the non-throwing.
He didn't even have it on the whole game, and a lot of that has to do with those gloves get real slick in the rain, so you don't want to have them on. It's nice if you're a defender and you're not trying to catch the ball and you're just trying to slip out of the O-line's grasp. It's not as fun if you're a quarterback and if the ball falls on the ground, you're screwed.
I mean, what about receivers' gloves though? They're wearing gloves, all the time in the games. I mean,
a lot of receivers' gloves have stickum on them, so you don't want to do that. You don't want to have to stickum on the ball while you're trying to pull it out to try and throw it.
Fair enough.
Okay. All right. John Kevin Hong asked this week's mailbag question. What is Vic's ceiling as a Sam, an average or an above average player?
His ceiling is that of Von Miller, if we're being honest here. His ceiling. Will he ever get there? I don't know. But as far as athletic ability, as far as what he can do, as far as what his overall ability says he can do, and as far as what last year kind of suggested he could do as a pass rusher, I think Von Miller is probably his potential as a Sam, as a just overall defensive player.
Yeah, I mean, I think to echo Scott, I mean, the sky's the limit for him and his ability there. I mean, the dude tested athletically one of the best, that any linebacker / defensive end type player has ever tested. So as long as he has the instincts and stuff to see it and go get it, he can be the best that he wants to be there. He's got all the tools. So.
Okay. I'm not going to go Von Miller. I think Von Miller is on the pedestal all by himself. But I'll go as a linebacker, not factoring in his pass rush abilities. I'll go Jamie Collins. I think in terms of what he can do as a linebacker position, obviously the pass rush is going to factor into it because he's going to continue to get reps as a nickel defensive end. But I think in terms of his skills as a linebacker, I do think it's more like a Jamie Collins type of player where, he can play off the ball. He can defend the run. He did a nice job setting the edge on a particular play. If Alan Stirk doesn't post a GIF of it, I'll probably do it later tonight if I can find it on my Twitter feed. I think his coverage potential, even though he's very iffy in zone at this point, just because he doesn't have a lot of experience dropping back into space and playing zone coverage, but really none of the Falcons linebackers are good in zone coverage. So, it doesn't necessarily make him stand out in any negative way there. I think, his man coverage potential is really high. I think he could he has the potential to be the best coverage linebacker the Falcons have. Certainly he has the athleticism for it, but when he's had the few opportunities to play man coverage, he's done a very good job. He almost made the play in the Super Bowl that would have, ended that fiasco in the end zone. He had the interception as a rookie dropping off underneath. When he plays coverage, I think does a good job sticking to that tight end or that running back's hip pocket. And I think he's an upgrade there potentially over Campbell. So I think his upside is very, very high. I'm not going to go Von Miller just because I think that puts an undue expectation on him, not to mention that Von Miller is primarily a pass rusher and not necessarily a 3-down linebacker. And as a Sam linebacker or a 2-down linebacker in this instance, I'll compare him more to Jamie Collins.
That's still a really, really good player. When you're talking as a pure linebacker, that's a really good player. And then you add in him dropping down on the line and pass rushing after that. I mean, that's just a complete guy that you need on your team.
Yeah, Collins is a Pro Bowler, so and people thought the Patriots were crazy when they traded him.
I was a little mad that the Falcons didn't trade for him because
Understandably,
for what it cost them, Atlanta could have easily plugged him in and had him play strong side linebacker, and on nickel downs had a Collins Vic set up, and it just would have been a much better team. But you win some, you lose some.
yeah, that's the Falcons' motto, isn't it? You win some, you lose some.
This year, at least.
I mean, I think for me, having Vic play Sam more, I think just adds to his overall value. I mean, Falcons are going to be looking to extend him pretty soon, so to pay a guy that much money to, just be a situational pass rusher, I think isn't the greatest use of resources. But if he shows and he has shown that he can play on base on early downs at that Sam spot and provide stuff in coverage, and then obviously the rush ability off the edge there, I think that just makes the Falcons so much better, and obviously better use of the resources than when they do end up extending him.
It's a great point there, Matt. Let's move on and talk about the upcoming matchup against the Carolina Panthers. Panthers are 5-3 at this point. The Falcons, this is the last of their 3-game road stand. This is an interesting matchup, as we talked about, now that the Panthers are having to deal with the loss of Kelvin Benjamin, but they have some other notable injuries that may affect the outcome of this game, particularly center Ryan Khalil, who's been missed most of this season. He's only really played in one game, played in a smidge of that Bears game, but really only played in that 49ers game in week 1. He's been dealing with a neck injury. They also have another potential injury with right guard Trey Turner, been dealing with a knee injury as well. So if either one of those two guys misses this game, that will create some opportunities for the Falcons' defensive line interior to really sort of help clamp down on the run game that you assume the Panthers will be focused heavily on establishing early in this game, now that they have lost arguably their number one receiver. So
it's very possible they're out both, from what my friend has been telling me. One of my friends is coaching in Carolina right now, and he's like, we are probably going to be without Ryan and Trey this week. So without those two guys, I mean, the Panthers are only averaging about 3.4 yards per carry as it is on the season. Without those two guys, it's going to be even tougher. And with how Ataba Rubin and Grady Jarrett and Dentari Poe played on the inside this past week, and with just how crappy Matt Karoly has been this year, I could see a legit situation where the Falcons are getting 5-6 sacks this week, stuffing the run all day, like just completely shutting down their offense. Now, that's not to say that they will, because division games are wonky like that, but they should have an advantage, at least on the interior line.
Matt, do you have any thoughts on that particular matchup or any other particular matchups that you're looking forward to seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too concerned about what the defense is going to be able to do. I think more so this matchup, I'm going to be concerned about the offense, because I think Carolina's defense has really kind of reverted back to closer to its 2015 form. I mean, they're getting after the passer. I think they're top 3 or 4 in sacks in the league. And they're also shutting down the run. I think I saw that they're only behind Denver in run defense as far as yards per game allowed. So really, for me, I mean, I think when you see the Falcons offense struggle, one of the main things that opponents do is they shut down the Falcons run game and make them one-dimensional, make Ryan drop back to pass. And we know that this isn't the greatest pass blocking unit, especially when you make them one-dimensional. So if that's the case, and they're getting to pin their ears back, and Julius Peppers and Charles Johnson, Mario Addison are getting to pin their ears back, that's where I'm going to worry a little bit. And if they can keep the game close, I think Carolina's offense can do enough to make this like a 17-14 Carolina game if Carolina shuts down the Falcons' run game and kind of makes them, like I said, one-dimensional. So, I mean, that's the matchup I'm looking for.
I have no confidence that this offense is going to be able to score a lot of points against this Carolina defense. So I'm with you on that, Matt. When you say 17-14, like that to me is the sort of game. If the Falcons are going to win it, I think that's really what it's going to be. So I do think it is a little bit more on the defense to be able to take advantage of any injuries that they have, the loss of Benjamin. That I think it's going to be really important for this defensive line to really sort of show that it can sort of go up against, the Jets don't have one of the least worst offensive lines. The defensive line played well against the Lions, which has one of the worst offensive lines. And this Carolina offensive line is by no means an all-star unit. And if they're down injuries, certainly it makes them less effective. So I think it's going to be big for the defensive line to really sort of control this game. And, hopefully the Falcons will finally get to be able to create those turnovers that everybody's been talking about the last couple of weeks. Carolina has had troubles with those. And so that will help the offense out. And I think, as far as the offense goes, I am going to be curious to see how well the offense performs in this game because I think, given a better week from Sark last week, there's expectations now that they will continue to improve as the season wears on because I don't think anybody would think this offense is where it needs to be. But it is interesting to see how they will handle this matchup because going up against Buffalo, who runs a very similar scheme, the Falcons' game plan and sort of their play calling in that game, I wouldn't say it was poor by any means, but it was just sort of basic. And they didn't really do anything all that much to really sort of attack that defensive scheme that Sean McDermott played in Buffalo, as well as, used to run in Carolina that they still retain. Now, obviously, I know people are going to say, "Oh, they didn't have Julio, they didn't have Sanu." That's a fair statement, but it is one of those things where, like, I think this game, in terms of what we know or want to see from this offense, I think this game will be a very good litmus test to see how much confidence we can and should have in this offensive play calling moving forward. Because, again, this is basically like the second time they get to play this defense, and they shouldn't be at least limited by, lacking talent. And so we should see, a much stronger game plan, and we should be able to see this offense find ways to sort of attack what few weaknesses the Panthers have, which is, in their zones heavy scheme, trying to attack the middle of the field, trying to get, Kuechly and Thomas Davis out of position and using the tight ends and the running backs and whatnot to sort of attack those guys, and obviously getting Julio going and whatnot. So I think this will be an interesting game to see. And I think we'll find out, on Sunday if this Falcons team is legitimately for real and back on track to where people thought they would be heading into the season, or if we're just sort of an also ran that's, still working out the kinks.
One thing I did notice is they were having a lot of trouble last week with stretch blocks to the left. And I wonder how much Atlanta's going to see that and go, you know what? Let's run it to the left on stretch plays a lot, especially if Devontae is fully healthy. Just let him go out there and run that stretch. Let him run it that way all the time. I think they allowed 3 15-yard runs that way last week, and they looked really susceptible to it. And if they're susceptible to that, they're susceptible to the backside rollout. They're susceptible to the levels concept on the backside, the Yankee routes, everything else. Basically, the Falcons' function of the offense from last year. So I honestly wouldn't change anything really about what the Falcons did to them in terms of game plan, and just use what the Falcons did to them last year. Just run a lot of stretch plays, run a lot of intermediate route combos, and just go after them. Bradbury's tough. I will say that. He's a really good corner. And their front seven is strong, but their front seven isn't as strong as they could be. Especially, again, on that left side, when the Falcons run to that left side, like their right side.
I mean, Kuechly being back helps, though, for sure. Like, you could see that last week against Tampa.
Oh, it definitely helps, but even Tampa was having some good runs.
Yeah, You definitely don't want to run into the teeth of Kawan Short. So definitely stretch plays, outside zone, dialing up that Devontae getting going, and using Tevin Coleman's speed to the outside, I certainly think are good strategies. And we'll see if the Falcons implement that, and then we'll see if they actually execute it. So it'll be an interesting matchup. I think we all want to see this team rise up, as it were, and do what they can. Evan Birchfield asks, how do you think our defensive matchups lined up prior to the Benjamin trade and now that he's in Buffalo?
I think right now it matches up a whole lot better. Their strength is their run offense, and without Khalil and Turner, Atlanta's got a huge advantage there, especially if their run defense can play like it did last week. Because Tyler Larson, Greg Van Roten, those guys aren't very good. Amini Silatulu, the only guy that I would really say that they have that's any sort of good there might be if they use Taylor Moton as the backup. I don't think their run defense is very good. I don't think their pass protection is very good. I think Atlanta would win. If Atlanta wins this game, it's going to be up front on defense because their defensive line dominates. And that's what they need to do, is just dominate. I think Grady Jarrett has to go in there, get a ton of pressure. Poe has to get a ton of pressure on the inside. And then the rest of the defense will work itself out, because I don't think there's anybody on this defense that's bad and doesn't match up well against the Panthers. In coverage, I mean, you can just put Trufant on Funchess or Alfred on Funchess and Trufant on Curtis Samuel, or have someone trail Christian McCaffrey. Honestly, I see the Panthers running more out of base than out of three wide receivers. But that's probably more a function of Cam Newton than anything else. I just don't see a team where anything's super scary right now.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think Benjamin was definitely a little bit of a Falcons killer in his career, and parting ways with him before this matchup definitely bodes well for the Falcons. I mean, I'm not concerned with Funchess. I think McCaffrey, our linebackers can handle him. Really, I mean, the only thing is if, again, the guys up front revert back to their old ways, and Carolina's offensive line, even with the injuries, somehow controls the line of scrimmage. I mean, the Dolphins' offensive line didn't have Mike Pouncey for the whole second half, and they still somehow controlled the line of scrimmage against the Falcons. So if they revert back to their old ways and Jonathan Stewart gets running downhill, I think that's the only dimension of that offense that really scares me. I mean, especially Greg Olsen's not in the lineup due to injuries. So that would be the only thing on from their offense that would scare me, is if their running game somehow gets going, which hasn't all year. So hopefully that continues. But yeah, I mean, like I said, this is a line of scrimmage game for me. If the offensive line for the Falcons brings their A game, which they need to do for this one, and can get the run game going, like Scott was saying, with the outside stretch zone run plays, then that'll open up the play action, the boots, protection schemes that favor the Falcons and give Ryan time. Then I think they'll be okay, and I think they can. They're not going to score 30. I don't think on that. That would definitely shock me. But I think they can crack the 20s, and that could be enough based off of Carolina's offense to win the game. So,
yeah, I don't have much else to add to that. I mean, the one thing that would scare me, besides Carolina's run game, is an extension of that run game, and it is Cam Newton's ability to run the ball. I'm hoping that we will see quite a bit of Beasley at the linebacker position. I think that will help us with the spying. We saw Deion Jones struggle against Tyrod Taylor. I know Cam doesn't quite move quite to the same way that Tyrod does, but he certainly is not a guy that you can certainly take lightly in the open field, given that he is probably like 30 pounds bigger than every one of our linebackers. So, I think Cam's ability to sort of extend plays. So I think, again, that goes back to the defensive line, keeping him contained and helping out the linebackers in that way, form or fashion. And I think, as Matt said, not having Benjamin, who has historically done a pretty good job against the Falcons, particularly in the red zone, and been a problem there, certainly will help them out. I think McCaffrey hasn't had a great season, but we know the old MO of the Falcons is when you're struggling, you play the Falcons and you come alive. Everybody was down on Mo Wilkerson. Matt, I remember we talked about Mo Wilkerson last
Don't
week.
remind me. Don't remind me.
And he decided that he wanted to be a one-man wrecking crew in that game. Fortunately, it wasn't enough to cost the Falcons the game, but it certainly got a little hairy at times. And given some of the struggles our linebackers have had containing receiving running backs with like guys like Theo Riddick, I think McCaffrey does offer some potential there. I think the biggest thing that works in the Falcons' favor is not necessarily their players' ability to match up with McCaffrey. It's just sort of how vanilla the Panthers' offense has used McCaffrey in a lot of ways, and it's very predictable. Our friend Charles tweeted earlier this week that basically anytime they split McCaffrey out of the backfield, they're throwing the ball to him. So that's something that hopefully the Falcons will pick up on as their sort of keys. Maybe the Panthers will realize they've been giving that key and maybe throw some other wrinkle, and hopefully the Falcons will prepare for that as well. So, I think if we can sort of keep Cam contained and we don't let McCaffrey and Stewart kill us, then I do think the defense should be able to take care of business. But again, if the offense can't get going and if we're, stuck like we were for a portion of the Jets game, at 13 points or whatnot, or 17 points or something, then it's going to be a close game. I think this is going to be a game that goes down to the wire for all four quarters. The Falcons have not been a great finishing team, and so I think that's going to be something that's going to have to change this week if they're going to beat this Carolina Panther team, because I'm with you on that, Matt. I would be very shocked if the Falcons get out to a big lead and blow this team out, given that would be something we haven't really seen outside of that Green Bay game all year long. And certainly Carolina's defense is much better than Green Bay's defense, and you would assume wouldn't allow that to happen. Okay. Before we get to the rest of the mailbag questions, we have some call-outs of the week. Matt, this is a section where we call people out. The last couple of weeks, we haven't had too many call-outs. I'll start. My call-out is going to be Thomas Dimitroff. No trades. Come on, man. Like, we couldn't get a fullback or something, man. Yeah. Come on. Like,
Jake Prosh.
Yeah, thank you. Like, I mean, Derrick Coleman's fine. He's been outstanding on special teams. Love him there. But, this offense needs a fullback. Jay Prosh has not been playing in Houston this year since Deshaun Watson got the start. I know they just gave him an extension, so there was no chance that they were going to trade him. But I'm just saying, like, we could have gotten like a third-string defensive end or a backup something. All these trades are happening. You're not on the phones, not trying to get a backup punter or something, man. We need some headlines to talk about on the show. Let's get some trades going.
I'm going to call out Papa John's.
Wow.
That dude had the gall to say that the NFL was why his pizza company has 5% of their stock down this last quarter. No, John. Your pizza company makes shitty pizza. That's why your stock is down 5%. Because everybody realized they could spend the same amount, go to a local pizza chain, and have better pizza than going to Papa John's. Stop being a dick.
Matt, do you have anybody you want to call out this week?
I mean, the only thing I could think of, and Scott kind of popped it in my head, was what's the deal with candy corn Twitter? Like, why is that a thing? Like, why is it dividing people? What's the deal?
Like candy corn, you have no taste buds. It's basically like candy corn people are also the people that think McDonald's makes the best hamburger. Like,
I just don't get why we're so caught up in candy corn. Like, it comes out once a year. Like, why is
this? Get it all year round. I see it in the grocery store all year round, right next to the candy I actually do buy. It's also in an orange package. It's called a Reese's Cup.
And do people that like it, do they do that? Do they get it all year round? Like, is that like the thing that's sitting in a bowl in their house that they just love to snack on? Like, why?
I mean, I've seen somebody buy it in like March when I was buying my Reese's Cups.
Aaron, you're very quiet on this topic. What's the deal with candy corn? You a fan or what?
I don't have a take on candy. It's fine. Like, I'm not going to go out of my way and buy candy
Yeah, I
corn.
mean, that's like, I don't
If I
think it's
go to
terrible,
someone's
but
house
I'm
and it's
not.
in a candy dish, and I'm like, oh, there's candy corn. Let me eat a couple of pieces of candy corn. It's fine. Like, I don't have a strong candy corn take. It's I know that's weird. Like, it seems like you either have to hate it or love it in this
Well, no, I think I'm
political
right there with
climate.
you. Like, I feel like it's not. There's no reason to have a strong opinion either way on it. Like, it's candy corn. Let's move on. Like, why is it taking up my timeline?
Yeah, if we're power ranking candy corn, it's probably like 28th on candy power rankings or something like that. Like, but candy's
Probably
good.
being
Like,
nice. But like right above Almond Joy.
It's
Yeah,
Almond Joy's.
Team Mounds.
Almond Joy's much lower than candy corn, if you ask me. But
No, that's what I'm saying. Like candy corn is like slightly better than Almond Joy. Like out of all the different candies, like I actually don't mind Mounds. I just think Almond Joys are disgusting. I don't know what the difference is and why like one's disgusting and one is like passable, but no. Like Almond Joy is by far the worst candy in the world. On a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 0. Candy corn at least registers as a 1.
well, as a person who never discriminated from any candy in their Halloween bag, yeah, it's all fine. It's all fine to me. Like, obviously there are preferences. There are things that you eat the night of Halloween. There are things you eat the next day. There are things that you bring to school the next day and share with your friends. There are other ones that you wait a week, and then it's usually the Almond Joy, and maybe it's the candy corn, and then it's like, what? I don't got anything else to eat, so I'm gonna scarf these, and it's all sugar to me, so it's fine. Let's finish this thing out with the mailbag. We can spend all day on candy. Evan Birchfield, Falcons obviously made no moves before the trade deadline. If they did make a move, what would you have liked to see them do?
Oof. Yeah, for me, it's Marcel Darius. I would have loved to have him here. Him rotating with Poe and Beasley. Not Beasley, Poe and Jarrett. Just on the interior and Ruben. I mean, at that point, you can pretty much just move all your hybrid guys to just pure defensive end.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it would be, anyone on the defensive line. I mean, I tweeted last week before the Jets game, Muhammad Wilkerson possibly falling out of favor there. I don't know if that's the case anymore after his performance, but, someone like that. But again, with the price tag, it's not really realistic. I mean, Falcons are really tight strapped to the cap. So, but if they're in a perfect world, I would have taken someone along the defense line. Cameron Wake, maybe. Dolphins were looking to dump people, but again, none of that seemed realistic.
Yeah, I'm all fullback. I would have given the Bills our 3rd round pick to get Patrick DeMarco back. If that didn't work out, I would have called up the Texans, send a 5th round pick or something to Jay Prosh. All fullback. This offense needs a great fullback. They get a fullback back, I'm telling you, things will start clicking into place. And Sark will start looking like a genius once they get that fullback back. But I know Obi Mahaley, so maybe I'll give him a ring, see if he's got something left in the tank, and maybe he'll want to come back to the Falcons. All right, Scott Ramsey, X Never Broken X. We both seem to share the opinion that our linebacker core is lackluster at best this year, despite all the fan raving. My question is this. If you could replace any of our starting linebackers with any other linebacker in the NFL, who would you replace and with whom? Please spend a few minutes explaining why this move or this type of player would shore up our defense. Who knows, maybe the football gods will listen one day and make something remarkable happen.
I just want Deion Jones to start looking like Bobby Wagner. I think Campbell's well on his way to looking like a KJ Wright. And then you really just need that 3rd Bruce Irvin type with Vic Beasley. And then you just need Duke Riley to come in and look more like a Malcolm Smith. Just have those guys kind of fill those roles. You don't need anything crazy great. You just need to basically have them emulate what the Seattle guys were.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely where my head was at. I was going to say Bobby Wagner for Deion Jones, just because. I mean, I don't think Deion will ever really get to that point. Just his body type. I mean, I think he's always going to be that space guy that's going to excel in coverage and kind of be, not a detriment, but it's somewhat of a liability in run support, being able to shed blockers and that. But his instincts are great. When he sees the hole open, he can run clean. I mean, Deion's one of the best in that regard. But if I could change something about him, I wish he was a little bit more of a Bobby Wagner thumper. Bigger, can shed the blocks, but still maintain coverage ability like Wagner can.
Yeah, Wagner's an obvious choice just because you guys both went Wagner. I'm going to throw a curveball. I'm going to say Levante David. I think David has sort of the perfect skill set that you look for in this scheme. He has the speed. He has the coverage ability. He has that run thumping capability. You could put him at weak side linebacker and not have to move Deion Jones from middle linebacker. And I think David would be a massive upgrade at that weak side spot. And then, of course, you would have the great Vic Beasley playing the same linebacker spot. And then you would have the world's best linebacker core in the league. So that would be my answer, Scott. All right, last question comes from Andy at Falcons. Andy, he asked, do you think Gabriel becomes more effective, or is he just not a fit with Sark?
I just don't think he really fits with Sark. I mean, I think eventually, Sark will realize that he can do more than just play all these gadget plays. But for right now, Sark's using him like a gadget player and not using him like, I don't know, a guy who can take a 10-yard slant and just kill it.
Yeah, I mean, I've been one of the few Sark defenders on Twitter, but I will say, I mean, his two biggest transgressions are he hasn't figured out how to use Taylor Gabriel, and he hasn't figured out how to use Tevin Coleman in the pass game. And Aaron, I know we've had discussions about this as far as Kyle Shanahan and Taylor Gabriel's connection and how Kyle's been really the only one that's proven that he knows how to use Taylor Gabriel to the best of his abilities. And it's looking true right now. I mean, obviously, like Scott was saying, he's really only been featured in gadget plays and in those bubble screens. I mean, those have been where he's had most of his production. So I hope that changes, but I mean, we're in the 7 games and it doesn't look like it is, but I hope I'm wrong. So I think just right now it's not really a fit between Sark and Taylor, and if Taylor, right now I'm thinking it's not likely that Taylor's going to be brought back, just based off cap concerns and other contracts that are going to be a bigger priority. So hopefully Taylor can maybe find his match, or maybe Kyle brings him on again in San Francisco because they need some wide receiver help. But yeah, I just don't think it's a fit between him and Sark.
Yeah, I can't dispute that. I mean, this week's game features a very favorable matchup for Taylor Gabriel, with Sanu playing in the slot against Munnerlyn and Julio probably drawing Bradbury most of the time. Daryl Worley is not a guy that should be able to handle Gabriel's quickness or speed, because Worley's a big, sort of stiff guy. Maybe they'll try to press him. That's been an effective way at times, and Buffalo did that very effectively, pressing Gabriel to sort of keep him contained. But if it doesn't, we don't see anything from Gabriel this week with a very favorable matchup. I don't think there's any reason to think that will change at any point the rest of the season. Matt said it, that was one of those things where Gabriel's rookie year in 2014, when Shanahan was the offensive coordinator, he looked great. The next year, with Shanahan in Atlanta and Dell Loggins taking over in Cleveland, Gabriel was basically used on screens and dink and dunk as a slot-only guy, and his production fell off of a cliff, even though he's 5'8" and this fast guy, and people think, that's the obvious and ideal way of using him. It's not really, and in 2016, playing him outside, using him as a vertical threat, using Julio to draw coverages from that safety, and then, with Gabriel facing those one-on-ones, taking advantage of that. That has not been an element really at all in this offense. We saw a couple of deep shots to Gabriel early in the season. Matt didn't hit them, and we really haven't seen very many since then. So, yeah, I don't have a lot of optimism for this working out between now and the rest of the season. The good thing is that we'll still probably get some opportunity for Gabriel to bust 40-yard touchdowns on screenplays because that's how talented he is. But I'm with Matt. I think, even if the Falcons had the space to keep him, I think based off of the way Gabriel's been used this year, I would see no reason for Gabriel to want to stay in Atlanta if Sarkisian's going to continue to be the offensive coordinator. And if I was his agent, I would tell him to leave. You probably get better opportunities elsewhere. So, we'll find out over these next 9 games if sort of that changes. But right now, it does sort of seem like we will see, the last games of Taylor Gabriel in Atlanta over the next 2 months. All right, guys, that's it. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. We know that we were supposed to do this on Tuesday, but due to the Halloween and Scott's love of candy corn, we had to postpone the show, push it back a day. If you want to send in your mailbag questions, use the hashtag Falcons Mailbag. Tweet at myself. I am at FalcFans. Scott is at Karasik S. The show is at Falcons PFC. Matt, let the people know where you are on Twitter and when they want to interact with you.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Matt Karoly, MattKaroly, and you can see my work at bloggingdirty.com.
All right, so check out Matt's stuff at Blogging Dirty. He does what's the thing that you do every week? I always forget what it's called.
Falcons First Takes.
Yeah, there it is. I knew it had a plucky title, so I didn't want to screw that up. Yeah, so check that out with Matt. Check us out on YouTube. Check us out on Facebook. Subscribe to Pro Football Central and Scott's YouTube page. If you're watching us right now, it's Scott Karasik. Just search it, and you'll make sure you won't miss a single update of this show, as well as Facebook, Falcons Central Radio. And check us out on ProFootballCentral.com. If you're looking for the iTunes links, you can find it there, and where you can listen to the podcast offline. So that's it, guys. We'll be back hopefully on Tuesday, and we'll hopefully be discussing a Falcons win over the Panthers. For letting us, for joining us on tonight's show, and we look forward to chatting with him in the future.